The room had grown so still that even the movement of the curtains seemed to belong to another world. Beyond the open window, the night stretched wide and clear, untouched by cloud or mist. Stars filled every part of the sky, brighter than you had ever seen them from this familiar place. Some gleamed sharply, while others seemed to breathe with a slow and distant light. The cool air carried the scent of leaves, dry earth, and flowers resting beneath the moon. Nothing outside appeared unusual at first. The rooftops were quiet. The garden was motionless. Yet the longer you looked, the more the darkness seemed to deepen, revealing stars that had been hidden only moments before. It felt as though the sky had moved closer while you were not watching. A faint silver shimmer crossed the upper edge of the window. It vanished so quickly that it might have been mistaken for tired eyes. Then the shimmer returned, slower this time, passing between two distant constellations before settling above the garden. The silver shimmer remained suspended above the trees, no larger than a distant flame. It did not flicker like a candle or dart like an insect. Instead, it held its place with patient certainty. Another light appeared several feet away from it. Then a third emerged lower down near the top of the garden wall. Together, they formed a loose descending line from the sky to the ground. Their glow was pale and restrained, barely brighter than starlight reflected in water. They did not illuminate the garden around them. They simply waited. Above them, the stars seemed to gather into a broad curved pattern, almost like an unfinished pathway drawn across the heavens. You searched for a familiar constellation, but found none. The arrangement was unlike anything remembered from books, maps, or winter nights spent watching the sky. A quiet sense of recognition still passed through you. Whatever waited beyond the window did not feel unfamiliar. It felt forgotten. A cooler breath of air entered the room and moved across the floorboards. Beside the bed, a dark coat rested over the back of a wooden chair. It had been left there earlier without thought, yet now it seemed perfectly placed. Near the doorway, a pair of walking shoes waited side by side. The room offered no reason to leave. The bed remained warm. The blankets still held the shape of rest. Even so, the quiet beyond the window had begun to feel larger than the comfort behind you. There was no urgency in it, no warning, only the steady suggestion that a path had opened somewhere nearby and might not remain forever. The silver lights outside drifted a little lower. One disappeared behind the garden wall. The others followed, one after another, leaving only the unfamiliar constellation above the trees. You gathered what was needed for the night air and turned toward the door. The hallway beyond the bedroom lay in a soft layer of moonlight. Familiar doors stood closed along the walls, their brass handles catching small traces of silver. The house seemed deeper at this hour, each room resting behind its own silence. Your footsteps were absorbed by the runner beneath them. Nothing creaked, nothing stirred. At the far end of the corridor, the staircase curved towards the floor below. A tall window on the landing revealed the same crowded sky, framed now between the dark outlines of neighboring roofs. The strange constellation had shifted position. Its lowest stars appeared to point toward the rear of the house. As you descended, the air became cooler. The scent of the garden reached you more clearly through a door left slightly open below. One final silver light hovered beyond the glass. It moved away as you approached, passing over the stone path without touching the ground. The night seemed to make room for you. Outside, the garden felt newly made. Every leaf carried a fine edge of moisture. Dew gathered on the petals of pale roses and along the narrow blades of grass. The stone path shone beneath the moon, its uneven surface marked by tiny pools of reflected sky. The silver light floated several paces ahead. Only one remained now. It moved slowly enough to follow without effort, pausing whenever the path curved behind a hedge or low wall. The flowers gave off a deeper fragrance in the cool air. Lavender, jasmine, and damp soil mingled together, clean and calming. A moth crossed the path and vanished into the shadow of a fruit tree. Far above, the strange constellation remained visible through gaps in the branches. Its shape had lengthened, pointing beyond the far end of the garden. The wooden gate there stood open. You could not remember leaving it that way. The gate opened onto a narrow lane, bordered by old hedges. By day, the route led toward fields and scattered houses. At night, it seemed to travel somewhere entirely different. The hedges rose higher than expected, their leaves silvered by moonlight. Small white flowers grew among them, closed tightly until the guide light passed nearby. As it moved forward, the flowers opened one by one. They did not glow. They simply revealed pale centers that mirrored the stars overhead. The lane curved away from the last garden wall and descended briefly between banks of fern. Behind you, the house remained visible for only a few steps. Then the hedges closed around the bend, and the familiar roof disappeared. No sound followed from the village. Ahead, the silver light reached a fork where one lane continued toward the fields. The other narrowed into a woodland track. The unfamiliar constellation pointed directly above the trees. The woodland track began beneath an arch of hazel and oak. Dry leaves softened the ground, though summer still held the branches overhead. The trees grew close together near the entrance, creating a tunnel of layered shadow. Only small pieces of sky could be seen between them. The silver light traveled into the darkness and faded until it resembled a distant star caught among the trunks. You followed the pale shape of the path. Moonlight touched exposed roots and patches of moss, guiding each step without brightness or glare. Gradually, the sounds of the open land changed. The breeze became a low movement through the canopy. An unseen stream murmured somewhere to the left. Night insects formed a quiet rhythm that rose and fell with the wind. The track climbed almost imperceptibly. With every turn, another gap opened overhead. Through each one, the strange constellation appeared farther along its curved route, drawing the way deeper into the woods. The sound of water grew clearer until the path reached a shallow stream. It crossed the woodland from beneath a wall of fern and continued between smooth black stones. The water was so calm that the sky appeared to flow across its surface. Stars moved between the rocks. Constellations bent and reformed around each ripple. A small wooden bridge spanned the stream, its planks pale with age. The silver light hovered above the far railing. For the first time, it seemed almost close enough to touch, though its shape remained indistinct. As you stepped onto the bridge, the forest breeze faded. The stream carried no fallen leaves or broken twigs. Only reflected stars traveled beneath you, slipping silently into the darkness downstream. At the center of the bridge, the unfamiliar constellation aligned with its reflection. For a moment, the path above and the path below became one continuous arc. Then the silver light moved onward. Beyond the stream, the ground rose more noticeably. The path wound between tall beeches whose pale trunks caught the moonlight. Their roots formed natural steps in the soil. The climb was steady, but unhurried, softened by moss and years of fallen leaves. The silver guide light no longer floated directly ahead. It appeared only at the next bend, then disappeared until you reached it. This made the woodland feel less like a road being shown and more like a place slowly remembering its route. Small stones began to appear among the roots. Their surfaces were unusually smooth and faintly reflective. Each one held a fragment of sky, though the canopy above remained dense. Some reflected stars that could not be seen overhead. Others showed thin lines of pale light angled in the same direction as the constellation. The higher you climbed, the cooler the air became. The forest seemed to be lifting you toward the night. The path widened around the remains of an enormous tree. Its trunk had split long ago, leaving a hollow chamber open to the sky. The living half continued upward, carrying a full crown of leaves. The older half curved around an empty space large enough to stand within. Inside, the wood was smooth and silver gray. No rot, insects, or fallen branches disturbed the hollow. At its center rested a shallow stone bowl filled with clear rainwater. The silver guide light lowered itself above the bowl. Its reflection appeared in the water, joined by several stars not visible through the opening overhead. One by one, those reflected stars shifted into a new arrangement. They formed the outline of a mountain. At the mountain's summit, a small circular shape appeared, surrounded by what resembled leaves or petals. The image lasted only a few breaths. Then the water returned to stillness, and the guide light rose towards the far side of the tree. Past the hollow tree, the woodland floor changed. Broad slabs of stone lay beneath the moss, almost completely hidden by roots and leaves. Their edges formed a gradual stairway climbing between the trees. The steps were too even to be natural, yet their age seemed greater than the forest around them. No carvings marked their surfaces, no walls or ruins stood nearby. Only the silent stair remained. The silver light hovered at the foot of the first exposed step. When you moved closer, the moss brightened slightly, revealing another slab above it. Then another appeared farther on. The staircase unveiled itself only as it was followed. On either side, blue woodland flowers grew from cracks in the stone. Their petals remained closed, but their stems leaned toward the path as though listening. The constellation above could no longer be seen through the canopy. Even so, its direction had become clear. Everything here was leading upward. The stone steps continued through a quieter part of the forest. The trees here were taller and farther apart. Their branches began high above the ground, leaving wide open spaces between the trunks. Every sound carried gently through them. The brush of a sleeve against the coat, the soft contact of shoes against stone, the steady movement of air across the upper leaves. It seemed possible that the forest was listening, though not with suspicion. The old trees appeared calm, attentive, and deeply familiar with passing travelers. At intervals, their roots crossed the staircase and then withdrew again, leaving the center unobstructed. The silver light passed from one trunk to another. For a moment, each tree held a pale reflection in its bark. Then the reflection faded as the light moved on. Ahead, the darkness between the trunks began to change. It was no longer black. A deep blue glow waited beyond the highest steps. The final stone step rose beyond the tree line. Suddenly, the forest fell away behind you. A long ridge stretched across the hillside, covered in pale grass that bent beneath the wind. The view reached over miles of dark woodland, sleeping fields, and distant clusters of lights. Far below, the village could be seen as a small scattering of warm points. The house itself was impossible to distinguish. Above the ridge, the sky appeared even larger than before. The unfamiliar constellation now spanned nearly the entire eastern horizon. Its curved shape ended behind a distant mountain. The summit stood apart from the surrounding hills, narrow and dark against the stars. Near its upper slopes, something pale caught the moonlight. At first, it resembled exposed rock. Then the shape separated into several tall, vertical lines. They were too regular to belong to the mountain. The silver guide light drifted toward the ridge path, leading in their direction. The ridge path followed the natural curve of the land. Grass brushed against its edges in long silver waves. The wind was stronger here, yet it carried no harshness. It moved around you like cool water, clearing away the last heaviness of sleep. Small flat stones had been placed at intervals along the path. Each stone pointed toward the mountain, though none bore markings. The silver light traveled lower now, skimming just above the grass. It disappeared whenever the blades rose around it, then returned farther ahead. To the left, the hillside dropped toward the forest. To the right, the land climbed into bare slopes scattered with white flowers and dark boulders. The path remained level between them. As you walked, the pale structures on the mountain grew clearer. They were columns. Some stood alone. Others supported curved arches open to the sky. No buildings surrounded them. They seemed created only to frame the stars. The ridge widened into a meadow, enclosed by low stone walls. White flowers covered the ground, each one turned upward toward the moon. Their round petals overlapped until the meadow resembled a field of fallen stars. A narrow route passed through the center without disturbing them. The silver guide light stopped at the entrance. Instead of continuing, it rose slowly above the flowers and faded into the sky. For several moments, there was nothing left to follow. Then the meadow itself began to respond. The nearest flowers tilted in one direction. A second cluster followed. Across the field, their movement traveled like a quiet wave, creating a clear passage toward the opposite wall. No light shone from them. Their pale petals were enough. As you crossed, the flowers gradually returned to face the moon. Behind you, the path disappeared among them. Ahead, a single gap in the stone wall opened toward the rising mountain. Beyond the meadow wall, the path met the foot of the mountain. A staircase had been cut directly into the pale stone. It rose in broad, shallow turns, never steep enough to feel tiring. Low walls followed each side, their upper surfaces polished smooth by weather and time. Here and there, hardy plants grew from narrow cracks. Silver thyme, small blue flowers. Soft cushions of moss protected from the wind. The stars remained visible above the entire ascent. No trees or roofs interrupted them now. As you climbed, the meadow below became a pale oval beneath the moon. The ridge narrowed into a thread. The distant village lights appeared no brighter than sparks. At each turn of the stair, one of the ancient columns came briefly into view. They stood far higher than they had seemed from below. The first arch waited above the next rise, framing a dark and empty section of sky. The staircase ended beneath two enormous pillars. They rose from the mountain without visible foundation, pale against the deep sky. Between them curved a stone arch, weathered by centuries of wind. Its surface held no carvings or decoration. The simplicity made it feel older than any monument. You passed beneath it and entered a wide terrace cut into the slope. The air changed at once. The wind dropped away, though nothing enclosed the terrace. Sound seemed to recede with it. Even the distant movement of grass disappeared. Within the arch, the stars looked sharper. Their colors became visible: cool white, faint gold, soft blue. One star near the center brightened as you watched. A second answered farther along the terrace. Then a third appeared beyond another arch. They formed a measured line leading across the mountain. Not separate guide lights this time, but real stars shifting into place. The terrace followed the curve of the mountain. Arches stood at wide intervals along its outer edge, each one opening onto a different region of the sky. Through one, the Milky Way rose in a bright river. Through another, a cluster of blue stars rested above the horizon. A third framed a slow meteor that vanished before reaching the valley. The inner wall of the terrace remained natural rock, broken by shallow alcoves. Within them rested stone benches shaped to follow the mountain. No dust or fallen leaves had gathered there. The place felt used, though no one else could be seen. As you moved between the arches, the aligned stars continued to shift ahead. Their path ended at the farthest opening. Beyond it, the terrace narrowed into a bridge of pale stone. The bridge crossed a deep gap between the mountain and a smaller neighboring peak. Clouds moved far below it. The pale bridge was wider than it had appeared from the terrace. Low stone edges bordered both sides, offering a clear view into the space below. Clouds drifted through the gap between the peaks. Their upper surfaces shone beneath the moon, smooth and white like a sleeping sea. The valley and forest had disappeared beneath them. Only the mountain behind and the smaller summit ahead remained connected by the bridge. The air was completely still. Each step seemed to carry farther than it should, then fade into the open sky. Halfway across, the stars reflected faintly in the polished stone underfoot. The unfamiliar constellation appeared there once more, its final curve pointed beyond the smaller peak, rather than toward it. Near the far end of the bridge, two slender pillars stood without an arch. Between them hung a curtain of fine mist. The mist did not move with the clouds below. It waited across the path like a silver doorway. The silver mist filled the space between the pillars from edge to edge. Up close, it resembled countless droplets suspended in the air. Stars could be seen through it, though their positions seemed altered. Some appeared lower than the horizon. Others shone where the mountain should have blocked them. The path continued beyond, but only for a short distance before fading into pale blue haze. You stepped between the pillars. The mist passed across the coat without dampness or cold. For a moment, the bridge, the mountain, and the clouds vanished together. There was only a soft blue stillness filled with distant points of light. Then the air cleared. Ahead lay a hidden road, winding across the upper face of the smaller peak. Tall grasses lined its edges, each tipped with silver seed heads. Far in the distance, high above the road, the outline of a vast circular gateway rose against the stars. Beyond that gateway, something green and luminous rested among the clouds. The path to the hidden sky garden had finally revealed itself. The road beyond the mist curved across the narrow peak, suspended high above a sleeping world of clouds. Silver-tipped grasses leaned over its edges, bending together whenever the wind passed. The circular gateway remained far ahead, perfectly framed against the stars. From this distance, it appeared less like a ruin and more like a doorway built for the sky itself. The green light beyond it rose and faded in slow breaths. No other path crossed the mountain. No walls or fences enclosed the road. Only flat stones marked its center, each one worn smooth beneath an unseen history of footsteps. The silver guide light drifted close to the ground, disappearing briefly among the grasses before returning farther ahead. With every step, the mountain behind seemed to fall away. The hidden road carried you deeper into the clouds. The road gradually widened as it crossed the peak. Low shelves of dark rock rose on the right, while the left side opened completely to the clouds. Their pale surfaces shifted beneath you like a quiet sea. Occasionally, a mountain summit broke through them, appearing and disappearing as the mist moved. The stone beneath your feet had begun to change. Thin green lines ran through it, as though moss or light had found its way into the smallest cracks. The glow was faint enough to notice only when the stars dimmed behind drifting vapor. Ahead, the circular gateway grew larger. Its outer ring was built from enormous blocks fitted so precisely that no joining lines could be seen. The silver light paused at the next curve. Beyond it, a short bridge crossed the final gap before the gate. The final bridge rested between two ridges of stone. It had no pillars beneath it and no visible support. The path simply continued across the empty space, pale and level above the clouds. The circular gateway stood directly beyond it now. From here, its scale became clear. The ring rose higher than the tallest trees in the forest below, though no wall surrounded it. Through its center, the green glow revealed only blurred shapes. Leaves, branches, perhaps the outline of a roof or pavilion. The bridge felt completely still beneath the moving sky. A few silver grasses had taken root between its stones, their seed heads shining in the starlight. The guide light crossed first and waited beneath the gateway. As you followed, the air grew warmer by the smallest degree. The circular gateway cast no shadow. Starlight passed through and around it as though the stone were part of the night. Its surface was plain from a distance, but close by, fine grooves became visible. They curved around the ring in repeating patterns like the paths of planets around a distant sun. There were no symbols to read and no words to understand. The design seemed intended to be felt rather than translated. At the foot of the gateway, the road divided into two narrow channels before joining again beyond it. A shallow ribbon of water flowed through the center. Stars reflected in that water, moving in directions that did not match the sky above. The silver guide light drifted through the opening. The green glow brightened. You stepped beneath the stone ring and felt the mountain air change into the fragrance of leaves. On the other side of the gateway, the bare mountain vanished. The path entered a sheltered hollow filled with living green. Tall grasses grew between pale stones. Fern fronds unfurled along the slopes. Low trees carried leaves so dark they appeared almost blue beneath the stars. The green light did not come from lanterns or hidden lamps. It rested within the plants themselves, gathered along the edges of leaves and the veins of broad petals. Nothing shone brightly. The hollow seemed illuminated by the memory of daylight, rather than by flame. Behind you, the circular gateway framed the distant mountain road. Ahead, the path descended between banks of moss toward a line of slender trees. A quiet stream moved somewhere below. The silver guide light faded among the leaves, no longer needed. The descending path followed the side of the hollow in a series of broad curves. Its surface was made from pale, flat stones separated by cushions of moss. Small white flowers grew along the edges, each one holding a drop of water at its center. The air was warmer here, though the night remained clear. Above the treetops, the Milky Way stretched from one side of the hollow to the other. The sound of water grew more distinct as the path descended. It did not rush or tumble. It traveled with a low, continuous murmur beneath the grasses. Every few steps, the trees opened onto glimpses of something larger ahead. A bridge, a terrace, the roofline of a small open pavilion. The garden had not revealed its full shape yet. It offered one quiet piece at a time. The stream appeared beside the path without warning. It was narrow enough to cross in one step, yet it followed the garden for as far as you could see. Clear water slipped over a bed of pale pebbles. The stones beneath it reflected green, blue, and silver tones from the plants and sky. Long grasses leaned over the banks, brushing the surface whenever the wind reached the hollow. The path remained beside the water. In places, it crossed from one bank to the other over flat slabs of stone. No railings or fences interrupted the view. The stream seemed to know the route better than the path did. It curved first toward the pavilion, then turned away and disappeared beneath a low arch of roots. Beyond those roots, a faint blue pool waited among the trees. The stream passed beneath the roots of two old trees and opened into a round pool. Their trunks leaned toward one another, forming a natural arch over the water. The pool was perfectly clear. Its bottom could be seen through several feet of stillness, covered in smooth stones and pale, fallen petals. Yet the surface reflected a sky far more crowded with stars than the one above. Tiny constellations moved slowly across it, changing shape without disturbing the water. A low stone seat curved around one edge of the pool. Moss softened its surface. The path divided here. One branch continued towards the pavilion. The other climbed through taller trees where suspended bridges could be seen between the trunks. The pool gave no indication which direction should be chosen. Both routes seemed to lead farther into the hidden garden. The path towards the pavilion remained close to the water. Its roof rested on slender wooden posts wrapped in flowering vines. There were no walls. The stars could be seen through every side, and the stream passed directly beneath one corner. Inside stood a low table carved from a single piece of dark wood. Several cushions rested around it, untouched by dew. A shallow bowl held fresh water and floating blue petals. Nothing suggested that anyone had recently been there. Even so, the pavilion felt cared for. The floor had been swept. The vines had been trained carefully around the posts. The cushions had been placed to face the widest view of the sky. From that open side, the garden descended through several hidden levels. Far below, pale paths and luminous trees curved around a central lake. From within the pavilion, the hidden garden finally began to reveal its scale. It covered the upper slopes of several connected peaks. Terraces curved around them like broad green ribbons. Stone bridges crossed gaps filled with cloud. Pools reflected the stars from different heights. Open shelters rested among trees, each one turned toward the sky. No single building dominated the view. The garden seemed shaped by the mountain rather than placed upon it. At its center lay a wide lake, dark and still, surrounded by pale flowering trees. Beyond the lake, a higher ridge rose into the night. A glass structure rested near its summit, nearly invisible except where it caught the stars. The path from the pavilion continued downward. It crossed the stream again and entered a grove of silver-leaved trees. The grove below the pavilion was filled with slender trees whose leaves were silver on one side and deep green on the other. Whenever the wind moved through them, the entire canopy changed color. Green became silver. Silver returned to green. The effect traveled across the grove in slow waves. The path beneath the trees was narrow and soft with fallen leaves. Moonlight reached the ground in shifting patterns. Small glassy fruits hung among the branches, transparent enough to reveal tiny seeds within. They gave off no light of their own. Instead, they gathered the surrounding stars and held their reflections. The stream ran beside the path again, now divided into several smaller channels. Each channel moved toward the lower terraces. Ahead, the trunks opened around a broad staircase descending through the grove. The staircase descended in long, shallow flights. Between each flight lay a small landing planted with ferns and white flowers. Water ran beside the steps in narrow carved channels, keeping pace with the descent. The silver-leaved trees grew close overhead. Their branches formed a loose canopy, though openings remained for the stars. At every landing, a different part of the garden came into view. A bridge crossing above the clouds, a row of circular pools, a distant terrace covered in blue flowers. The central lake appeared larger each time the trees parted. Its surface remained dark, yet a ring of pale trees reflected around its edge. No guide light led the way now. The garden itself had become the guide. Every path, stream, and staircase seemed to flow toward the water below. The staircase ended on a wide terrace covered in blue flowers. They grew in low, rounded clusters, leaving only a narrow path through the center. Each blossom faced upward. Their petals were darker at the edges and almost transparent near the middle. Starlight passed through them, making the terrace look as though pieces of the sky had settled across the ground. A low wall followed the outer edge. Beyond it, the clouds moved through the valley below. The central lake lay to the right, partly hidden by pale flowering trees. To the left, a narrow bridge reached toward another peak. Several small circular pools had been built beside the path. Their surfaces were still, each reflecting a different section of the heavens. One held the Milky Way. Another reflected a crescent moon that was not present in the sky. The The circular pools were arranged along the terrace like stepping stones too large to cross. Each one was bordered by a single ring of pale stone. Their water remained perfectly level despite the wind moving through the flowers. The first reflected the stars directly overhead. The second showed a sky filled with slow-moving clouds of violet light. The third held the image of a distant planet surrounded by a thin silver ring. None of these visions seemed frightening or strange. They felt quiet and remote, like windows opening onto places too far away to disturb the garden. Between the pools, narrow channels carried water toward the central lake. Blue petals occasionally fell into them and drifted away. At the end of the terrace, the path curved beneath an archway formed entirely from flowering branches. The branch archway was formed by 4 pale trees growing toward one another. Their limbs crossed overhead without touching. Clusters of white flowers filled the spaces between them, creating a loose canopy above the path. As you passed beneath, a few petals broke free. They did not fall directly to the ground. The wind carried them forward, turning slowly through the air until they reached the lake. Beyond the arch, the path widened into a long promenade. Pale flowering trees lined both sides. Their branches leaned toward the water, reflected perfectly in its dark surface. The lake was much larger than it had appeared from above. Its far shore rested beneath another mountain ridge. At the center, a small island held a single round pavilion beneath an open dome of branches. The promenade followed the curve of the lake. Its stones were broad and smooth, separated by thin lines of moss. The flowering trees created a rhythm of pale trunks and dark water. Some branches reached so low that their petals touched the surface. Small ripples spread outward whenever they did. The lake held more than reflections. Deep beneath the water, faint lines of blue-green light moved slowly from one shore to another. They resembled the paths of stars across a long exposure of the sky. No fish broke the surface. No insects gathered above it. The water remained undisturbed except for the touch of petals. Farther along the promenade, a narrow wooden jetty extended toward the island pavilion. A small boat rested there without rope or anchor. The boat beside the jetty was built from pale wood. Its shape was simple and narrow, with one low seat at the center. No oars rested inside. No sail or mechanism could be seen. The lake beyond it remained completely calm. As you stepped onto the jetty, the boat moved closer by itself until its side touched the wood. It did not rock. The surface held it as steadily as stone. Across the water, the island pavilion appeared between the flowering branches. Its roof was circular and open at the center, allowing the stars to shine directly through. A line of faint blue-green light beneath the lake curved from the jetty toward the island. The route was clear. The boat waited without movement, ready to carry you across. The boat moved away from the jetty without sound. No wake formed behind it. The lake opened in every direction, black and mirror smooth beneath the stars. The flowering shore receded slowly. Its pale trees became a soft ring around the water. Beneath the boat, the blue-green path remained visible. It traveled through the depths like a quiet current of light. The island grew closer. Its banks were covered in moss and low white flowers. Stone steps descended directly into the lake, though no other boat waited there. Above them, the round pavilion stood within a circle of trees. Their branches curved inward, forming a living dome around its roof. Through the open center, one bright constellation rested exactly above the pavilion. The boat reached the island steps and stopped. The stone was dry despite touching the water. A short path crossed the moss toward the pavilion. White flowers opened along its edges, their petals reflecting the lake's hidden light. The pavilion floor was circular and made from dark, polished wood. No table or cushions occupied the space. At its center stood a shallow basin of black stone. The water inside reflected the constellation above with extraordinary clarity. Around the basin, the open floor left room to sit, rest, or simply look outward across the lake. From the island, every part of the garden seemed connected. Streams descended from higher terraces. Bridges crossed the cloud-filled gaps. Paths curved through trees and flowers. All of them appeared to lead eventually toward this silent water. Beyond the pavilion, a second path continued across the far side of the island. It ended at a narrow bridge built from pale stone. The bridge curved gently over the water and connected with the opposite shore. There, the land rose again. Broad terraces climbed toward the higher ridge where the glass structure had been visible from the pavilion. Its outline now shone more clearly beneath the stars. It resembled a glasshouse, though no ordinary glasshouse could have stood so high above the clouds. Within it, tall plants and silver branches formed dark shapes behind the transparent walls. A staircase climbed from the lake toward that distant structure. Small pools and resting gardens appeared along the route. The hidden sky garden had opened around you, yet its highest and quietest places still waited above. The pavilion welcomed you with a stillness that seemed deeper than the lake around it. At the center, the shallow black basin held a perfect reflection of the constellation overhead. The stars within the water appeared brighter than those in the sky. As you moved closer, faint rings traveled across the surface without breaking the reflection. Each ring reached the edge and returned towards the center. Beyond the open pillars, the lake surrounded the island in every direction. The boat rested silently at the steps. Across the water, bridges and terraces rose toward the higher ridge. The glass house waited near the summit, transparent beneath the stars. For a little while, there was nowhere else you needed to be. A narrow path left the pavilion through an opening in the circle of trees. White flowers lined both sides, their petals pale against the moss. The route curved around the far edge of the island, where the water became darker and deeper. Branches leaned over the lake, trailing silver leaves close to the surface. At the end of the path, a pale stone bridge rose in a low arc. It connected the island with the opposite shore without touching the water beneath its center. No gate marked the crossing. No guide light waited ahead. The broad terraces beyond were enough. They climbed gradually through resting gardens, small pools, and groves of flowering trees toward the glasshouse above. The bridge was broader than it had appeared from the pavilion. Its pale stone surface curved smoothly above the lake. Low edges followed each side, worn soft by weather. From the center, the island pavilion could be seen behind you within its circle of trees. Ahead, the opposite shore opened into a quiet garden of low grasses and shallow pools. The blue-green light beneath the lake continued below the bridge. It passed through the water like a slow current, then disappeared beneath the farther bank. The glasshouse remained high above. Its transparent roof caught the Milky Way in long silver reflections. The bridge descended gently toward a landing surrounded by white flowering shrubs. The bridge ended beside a garden arranged around several shallow pools. They were smaller than those on the blue flower terrace and filled almost to the rim. Long grasses grew between them. White flowers floated on the water without stems or leaves. Each pool reflected the same sky, yet the stars appeared at different depths. Some seemed to rest directly upon the surface. Others looked far below, as though the pools opened into endless space. A path of flat grey stones wound carefully between them. At intervals, low moss-covered seats faced the water. The route toward the glasshouse continued beyond the final pool, where a broad staircase began beneath flowering trees. Before the staircase, the path entered a small enclosed garden. Low stone walls curved around a bed of soft moss. At its center stood a single pale tree with wide horizontal branches. Beneath it, a smooth stone bench followed the shape of the trunk. The leaves above were dark green, though their edges shone silver whenever they moved. A narrow channel of water crossed the garden and disappeared beneath the bench. The sound was almost too quiet to notice. From here, the lake could still be seen through the trees. The island pavilion appeared small and distant now. Above the opposite wall, the glass house rose a little clearer, its tall windows filled with shadowed leaves. The staircase began beneath 2 rows of flowering trees. Their pale branches formed a loose canopy above the steps. Petals gathered along the edges, leaving the center clear. The climb was divided into short flights, each followed by a wide landing. Small pools occupied the corners of the landings. Water overflowed silently from one level to the next through narrow stone channels. The higher you climbed, the more the lake disappeared behind the trees. The glass house remained visible through the canopy. Its roof now showed delicate ribs of pale metal. Along the walls, tall leaves pressed faint silhouettes against the glass. The staircase continued upward through a soft fall of petals. The The staircase opened onto a narrow terrace planted with tall silver stems. From each stem hung a closed bell-shaped flower. They were not made of metal, yet the wind moved through them with a faint chiming sound. The notes were soft and uneven. No melody repeated. The terrace overlooked the lake through a gap in the trees. Clouds moved beyond it at the same height, passing slowly between the distant peaks. A path crossed the silver flowers and led beneath a simple stone arch. Beyond the arch, another staircase climbed along the mountainside. The glasshouse stood directly above that route now. Its highest panels reflected the stars in narrow blue lines. Beyond the arch, the staircase followed a stream cut into the mountain. The water ran beside the steps in a deep, narrow channel. Its current was clear and fast, though almost silent. Small bridges crossed the channel whenever the staircase changed sides. Moss covered their pale stones. Blue flowers grew close to the water, their petals trembling in the moving air. The stream descended from somewhere near the glasshouse. At each turn, the structure appeared larger. Its walls were not perfectly clear. Moisture gathered inside them, softening the outlines of enormous leaves and climbing branches. A warm green haze rested behind the glass. It looked like weather held within a room. A broad landing extended from the staircase like a balcony. No roof covered it. A low stone wall separated the garden from the open sky. Beyond that wall, the clouds had risen until they seemed level with the terrace. Their pale surfaces moved past in long, unbroken layers. The lower garden appeared through occasional openings. The central lake, the island pavilion, the blue flower terrace. Each place looked smaller, yet still connected by paths and water. A curved seat had been built into the wall. Beside it, a shallow basin collected clear droplets falling from an overhanging branch. The glasshouse stood only one final ascent above. The final stairway rose directly toward the glasshouse. It was wider than those below and bordered by low banks of ferns. Silver grass filled the spaces between pale boulders. The stream divided into two channels and climbed beside the steps. At the top, the glasshouse rested on a circular stone platform. Its walls curved slightly inward before meeting the domed roof. Tall double doors stood open. No handle, lock, or threshold interrupted the entrance. Through the doorway, broad leaves overlapped in layers of green and blue. Moist air drifted outward, carrying the scents of moss, rainwater, and night-blooming flowers. The mountain wind faded behind you as you reached the platform. The glass doors rose several times higher than an ordinary entrance. Their frames were made from pale metal shaped like branching stems. Drops of moisture clung to every panel. Beyond them, the glasshouse opened into a wide central aisle. The floor was formed from dark stones with moss growing between them. On either side, enormous plants rose from deep beds of earth. Some leaves were broad enough to shelter beneath. Others curled into spirals around slender trunks. The light inside remained low and green, mixed with the blue of the stars above. No lamps burned anywhere. The entire interior seemed illuminated by the plants, water, and glass, holding the night between them. Inside, the sound of the garden changed. Water dripped from high leaves into hidden pools. The wind became a soft movement through the upper branches. The central aisle curved beneath plants that reached almost to the dome. One leaf extended over the path like a roof. Its veins carried faint blue light from stem to edge. Drops gathered along its surface, then fell one by one into a stone basin below. The basin overflowed into a narrow channel running beside the aisle. Smaller plants leaned toward that water. Their leaves opened as it passed. Farther ahead, a circular clearing appeared beneath the highest part of the glass dome. The central aisle entered a circular clearing beneath the dome. No tall plants grew there. Instead, low moss surrounded a single round pool. The glass roof opened directly above it, divided into slender panels that framed the stars. At the pool's center rose a cluster of pale water lilies. Their petals remained closed. As the constellation above moved into the center of the dome, one flower opened, then another followed. Their inner surfaces reflected silver light across the water. The pool responded with slow outward ripples. Around the clearing, several paths disappeared into different parts of the glasshouse. One led toward the hanging gardens. Another descended beside a waterfall. A third passed beneath an arch of dark leaves. The path towards the hanging gardens rose along a narrow wooden walkway. It passed between tall trunks and suspended baskets formed from woven roots. Long plants spilled from them in curtains of leaves. Some ended in blue flowers. Others carried clear droplets that never seemed to fall. The walkway remained open to the dome above. Stars appeared through layers of foliage and misted glass. At intervals, the path widened around small platforms with low benches. From one platform, the central lily pool could be seen below through the leaves. The walkway continued toward an upper chamber where silver vines covered the glass walls. Their pale stems formed a quiet pattern around a circular doorway. The circular doorway opened into a smaller glass chamber. Silver vines climbed every wall and crossed the ceiling in delicate lines. Their leaves were narrow and almost transparent. Stars shone through them from outside. At the chamber's center stood a tree no taller than the room. Its trunk was white and smooth. Instead of fruit, it carried dozens of closed flowers shaped like small folded stars. A shallow channel circled the tree's roots. Water moved around it without an entrance or outlet. When the wind touched the glass, the silver vines trembled together. Several star-shaped flowers opened. Their petals released a faint, cool fragrance into the chamber. A narrow passage left the silver vine chamber and descended into warmer air. The sound of falling water grew around you. The passage opened into a long room where rain fell continuously from the glass ceiling. It did not cover the entire space. The water descended in straight silver curtains between beds of moss and broad-leaved plants. Stone paths passed safely between them. Where the rain reached the floor, it gathered in shallow channels and traveled beneath the walls. The glass above showed a perfectly clear night sky. No cloud explained the rainfall. It seemed the room had kept one quiet shower for itself. The scent of wet leaves filled the air. The path continued between the falling curtains. Rain sounded different in every part of the room. On broad leaves, it became a low patter. On moss, it disappeared without sound. In the shallow channels, it formed a steady whisper. The air was cool against your face, but never cold. Fine mist gathered above the path and drifted close to the ground. Through the rain, a glass door could be seen at the far end. Beyond it lay an open balcony wrapped around the outside of the glasshouse. The stars appeared sharper there. The mountain air waited just beyond the wet warmth of the room. You followed the dry stones toward the door. The door opened onto a balcony following the curve of the glasshouse. A pale metal railing traced its outer edge. Behind you, rain continued to fall inside the glass walls. Ahead, the entire hidden garden stretched beneath the stars. The lake lay dark and distant. The island pavilion rested at its center like a small pale flower. Terraces, streams, and bridges connected the mountain slopes below. Clouds moved between the peaks, occasionally hiding the lowest paths. The balcony itself was planted with low silver grass. Several curved seats faced the view. At the far end, a narrow exterior staircase climbed toward a small platform above the glass dome. The exterior staircase climbed beside the curved glass panels. Each step was narrow but level. The garden fell farther below with every turn. At the top, a circular platform rested above the center of the dome. No roof or railing enclosed it. A ring of low stone seats followed its edge. The stars filled every direction. The glasshouse beneath your feet glowed faintly through layers of leaves, water, and mist. From here, the garden's streams could be traced from the highest terraces down toward the central lake. Farther beyond, the circular gateway stood on its mountain ridge. The entire journey remained visible beneath the sky. On the far side of the platform, another stairway descended toward a narrow ridge behind the glasshouse. It was not visible from the lower garden. The steps led into a quieter landscape of silver grass, dark trees, and pale stone. No pavilions or pools could be seen there. Only a long path climbing toward the highest part of the mountain. At its end stood a grove of tall white trees beneath an unusually bright region of sky. Between their trunks, something like a glass bridge reflected the stars. The hidden garden below remained beautiful and vast. Yet the path ahead felt calmer, more private, as though the mountain had saved its most peaceful places for those who continued upward. The stairway descended from the platform onto the hidden ridge behind the glasshouse. Here, the air felt cooler and quieter. Silver grass covered the ground in long, soft waves. Dark trees stood at wide intervals, their branches shaped by years of mountain wind. The glasshouse remained visible behind you, glowing faintly through its misted dome. Ahead, the path followed the ridge toward the grove of white trees. No streams crossed this part of the garden. No pavilions interrupted the open land. Only small, pale stones marked the route. The distant glass bridge appeared between the trees whenever the grass lowered. It reflected the stars so clearly that parts of it seemed to disappear into the sky. The ridge narrowed as the path continued. Silver grass grew on both sides, brushing against the pale stones. The clouds below were hidden now by the shape of the mountain. Instead, the ground fell into dark valleys filled with distant blue mist. The white tree grove stood closer. Its trunks rose straight and smooth, brighter than any bark you had seen before. Their branches carried narrow leaves that reflected the stars in quick silver flashes. The glass bridge stretched behind them from one section of the ridge to another. It had no visible supports. The path remained firm and level beneath your feet. Behind you, the glass house gradually disappeared beyond the curve of the land. The first white trees stood at the edge of the path. Their trunks were cool and smooth, without cracks or knots. No two grew close together. Each tree had space for its branches to open toward the sky. The leaves were pale on one side and nearly transparent on the other. When the wind turned them, stars appeared through the canopy. The ground beneath the grove was covered in soft grey moss. Small pools gathered between the roots, reflecting the white trunks and the sky above. The path curved gently among them. Farther inside, the glass bridge crossed a dark opening in the mountain. Its surface caught the starlight in a single quiet line. The pools beneath the trees were no deeper than a few inches. Clear water rested over beds of pale stone. Each pool reflected a different arrangement of branches and stars. Some held the white trunks perfectly still. Others showed stars drifting slowly across their surfaces. The path passed between the pools on broad, flat stones. No moss grew upon them. They appeared newly placed, though their edges had been softened by time. The glass bridge waited beyond the final trees. From here, its surface looked completely transparent. Only the faint outline of its edges revealed where it crossed the darkness. On the opposite ridge, more white trees rose beneath the Milky Way. The grove ended at the edge of a deep gorge. Its walls fell almost vertically into mist. No river could be heard below. Only the wind moved through the opening. The glass bridge began without a gate or railing. Its transparent surface extended from the pale stone path and crossed towards the opposite ridge. A thin silver frame followed each edge. Stars reflected beneath your feet, making the bridge seem suspended within the night itself. The white trees behind you remained still. Across the gorge, their distant companions waited among low silver grass. The bridge gave no sign of movement. It rested between the ridges with the quiet certainty of stone. The first step onto the glass bridge felt no different from stone. Its surface was cool and completely steady. The gorge opened beneath you. Mist moved through its depths, occasionally revealing dark walls and narrow ledges far below. The stars reflected in the bridge, but so did the white trees behind and ahead. For a moment, the path seemed to continue through several skies at once. The silver frame remained beside your feet, marking the safe route across. No wind disturbed the crossing. The mountain air became strangely still. Halfway over, the highest point of the garden appeared beyond the opposite grove. A pale, circular sanctuary rested near the summit, open to the stars. The glass bridge ended beneath another white tree. Its roots curved around the silver frame as though protecting the crossing. The path returned to pale stone. This grove was quieter than the first. The trees grew taller here, their upper branches disappearing into thin mountain mist. Small white petals rested on the moss, though no flowers could be seen above. A narrow stream appeared beside the path. Its water flowed uphill toward the summit. The current was slow but unmistakable. Leaves and petals traveled with it, climbing gently between the roots. The path followed the stream. Far above, the circular sanctuary appeared and disappeared behind the white trunks. The stream climbed beside the path without spilling or slowing. Its surface reflected the stars even beneath the thickest branches. Pale petals drifted upward in the current. Occasionally, one left the water and rested upon the moss. The white trees grew farther apart as the path rose. Between them, the summit sanctuary became clearer. It was formed from a low circle of pale columns. No walls enclosed it. A broad opening faced the sky garden below. The stream divided into several narrow channels near the top of the grove. Each channel disappeared beneath silver grass. The main path continued toward a staircase carved directly into the mountain. The staircase began where the white tree grove ended. Its steps had been carved from the mountain itself. They followed a shallow channel between two walls of pale rock. Silver grass grew from narrow cracks. Small white flowers opened wherever water gathered. The uphill stream disappeared beneath the lowest step. Higher above, it returned in thin channels running down both sides. The staircase climbed in slow curves rather than a straight line. At each bend, the hidden garden below came briefly into view. The glasshouse dome, the central lake, the distant circular gateway. Then the rock walls closed around the path again. The The summit sanctuary waited beyond the final curve. The rock walls lowered as the staircase reached the summit ridge. The sky opened around you once more. Silver grass covered the level ground. The circular sanctuary stood ahead, formed from 12 pale columns supporting a narrow ring of stone. Its center remained completely open to the stars. No roof covered it. Low steps surrounded the entire structure. The uphill stream emerged from the grass and flowed toward the sanctuary. It entered through a narrow gap between the stones. Inside, the water spread into a perfectly circular pool. Beyond the columns, nothing rose higher. The sanctuary rested at the quietest point of the mountain. The sanctuary floor was made from pale stone worn smooth by time. The circular pool occupied its center. Water rested level with the surrounding floor, creating a raised edge. Stars reflected within it from every direction. The columns framed different parts of the sky. One held the Milky Way. Another framed a distant planet. Others opened onto the lower garden and the sea of clouds beyond. A ring of low seats followed the outside of the sanctuary. Silver grass leaned through the spaces between the columns. Nothing moved except the water and the wind. The summit offered no command to continue. It simply invited you to remain beneath the open sky. The summit pool appeared shallow from the edge, yet its reflection held more depth than the sky above. Stars seemed to continue downward without end. A single white petal rested at the center. The wind moved through the sanctuary, but the petal did not drift. When you looked closer, thin rings of light began to spread from beneath it. Each ring crossed the reflected stars and reached the pool's edge. For a moment, the entire hidden garden appeared within the water. Paths, bridges, trees, the glasshouse. Then the vision softened back into stars. The pool remained still, keeping the mountain's memory beneath its surface. One opening between the columns faced the western side of the mountain. Beyond it, a narrow path continued along the summit ridge. The route was less formal than those below. Flat stones rested among silver grass and low white flowers. A line of dark trees followed the ridge farther ahead. Behind them, a soft blue glow rose from somewhere hidden on the far slope. The sanctuary remained visible through the columns as you stepped outside. Its circular pool reflected the stars behind you. The new path curved gently away from the summit. It seemed to lead not toward another great structure, but toward a quieter and more sheltered place. The ridge path descended only slightly before entering the dark trees. Their trunks were smooth and nearly black. Their leaves held a muted blue color beneath the stars. The glow ahead grew stronger, though it remained soft. The trees opened around a shallow hollow, sheltered from the wind. Blue flowers covered its floor. They were smaller than those on the lower terraces and gave off no light themselves. Instead, the glow came from a narrow pool hidden among them. Its water was pale blue and completely clear. A low stone wall circled part of the hollow. Within it rested several moss-covered seats facing the pool. The pale blue pool followed the natural curve of the hollow. Its edges disappeared beneath moss and flowers. No stream entered or left it. The water seemed to gather its light from the stars. Small ripples crossed its surface whenever the wind reached the hollow. The dark trees reflected within it as long blue shapes. A path of narrow stepping stones crossed the shallowest end. Beyond them, the ground rose toward another ridge. At its top stood a small open shelter formed from pale wood and dark branches. It faced away from the summit, overlooking a quiet valley hidden from the rest of the garden. The stepping stones offered the only route forward. The stepping stones rested just beneath the surface. Each one became visible as you approached. The water moved gently around their edges, carrying reflections of stars between them. Halfway across, the hollow opened behind you. The summit sanctuary rose above the dark trees in the distance. Ahead, the small shelter appeared more clearly. Its roof was woven from slender branches. No walls enclosed the platform beneath it. A single long bench faced the valley. The last stone reached a mossy bank. From there, a narrow path climbed between blue flowers toward the shelter. The wind returned softly as you left the protected hollow. The shelter stood on a small stone platform above the hidden valley. Its pale wooden posts supported a roof woven from dark branches. Silver leaves had grown through the gaps, creating a loose canopy. The long bench followed the open side. Beyond it, the valley descended beneath a layer of blue mist. Tall, dark trees rose through the haze. A narrow river reflected the stars far below. No paths or structures could be seen within the valley. It appeared untouched, even by the hidden garden. The air carried the scent of cool stone and distant water. For a moment, the mountains seemed to hold nothing but this quiet view. A second path began behind the shelter. It passed beneath the woven roof and entered a narrow corridor of dark trees. The ground was covered in silver leaves. They made no sound beneath your steps. Low branches curved over the path, forming a natural tunnel. Tiny white flowers grew along the roots. Ahead, the trees opened onto another high terrace. A pale stone bed could be seen beneath a canopy of branches. It was not an indoor room. It rested entirely beneath the sky. Soft cushions and folded blankets covered the stone platform. Beyond it, the valley and stars remained visible through the trees. The resting terrace curved around the mountainside. A low wall followed its outer edge, leaving the view open. At the center stood a broad, pale stone platform, softened by thick cushions and folded blankets. Dark branches formed a canopy overhead. Silver leaves moved gently between the stars. A shallow basin rested beside the bed. Clear water filled it to the rim. Several white petals floated upon its surface. The hidden valley stretched below in blue mist. Farther away, the summit sanctuary remained visible through a break in the trees. Nothing enclosed the terrace. The mountain night itself had become the room. The blankets were warm despite the mountain air. The cushions yielded softly beneath their own weight. Above, silver leaves turned slowly in the wind. Stars appeared and disappeared between them. The pale basin reflected the same movement beside the bed. From the valley below came the faint sound of distant water. No other part of the garden could be heard. The glasshouse, lake, bridges, and gateway had fallen far behind. Only the summit sanctuary remained visible through the trees, pale and quiet beneath the Milky Way. The path continued somewhere beyond the terrace. For now, it could wait. This high resting place had been prepared for stillness, and the night offered more than enough time to remain. The path beyond the resting terrace remained hidden until you stood again. It began behind the branch canopy, where silver leaves gathered beside a narrow opening in the trees. The stone bed and folded blankets stayed visible for several steps. Then the branches closed gently around the path. The ground was softer here. Grey moss filled the spaces between flat stones. Small white flowers grew close to the roots, their petals folded inward against the mountain air. Ahead, the trees curved toward one another and formed a long, natural corridor. A faint pale light rested at its far end. It did not resemble the blue glow of the hollow. This light was almost colorless, quiet and steady. The path continued toward it without turning. The tree corridor narrowed gradually. Dark trunks stood close on both sides. Their upper branches crossed overhead, though small gaps still revealed the stars. Silver leaves covered the path in a thin layer. They moved when the wind reached them, sliding together without sound. The pale light ahead became clearer. It came from a wall of smooth stone built directly into the mountainside. A tall opening had been cut into its center. No door filled it. No carvings marked the stone. Only a narrow stream of white mist flowed outward across the ground. The path led directly through that mist. Behind you, the resting terrace had disappeared completely among the trees. The stone opening rose higher than the surrounding trees. Its edges were perfectly smooth. The white mist reached only to your ankles and carried no coldness. Beyond the threshold, the mountain passage remained visible for a short distance. Pale walls curved inward. A narrow channel of water ran along the center of the floor. The surface reflected small points of light that had no visible source. The air inside smelled of wet stone and clean earth. You stepped beneath the arch. The sounds of wind and leaves faded at once. Behind you, the forest remained framed within the opening. Ahead, the passage turned slowly into the mountain. The hidden garden had one final path left to reveal. The passage followed the water channel deeper into the mountain. Its floor remained level and dry beside the stream. The walls held no torches, lanterns, or glowing stones, yet pale reflections moved across them as though moonlight traveled beneath the water. The channel widened at intervals into shallow basins. Each basin reflected a different part of the garden you had crossed. The glasshouse appeared in one, the white tree grove in another. Farther on, the summit sanctuary rested beneath a field of stars. The images moved only when the water moved. They were not doors back to those places. They were memories carried quietly through the mountain. The passage opened into a circular chamber. A ring of shallow pools occupied the floor. Each pool was separated from the next by narrow paths of pale stone. Within them, the garden returned in fragments. The central lake beneath the stars, the glass bridge over the mist, blue flowers surrounding the hidden hollow, the outdoor bed beneath silver leaves. No reflection showed you. Only the places themselves remained. At the center of the chamber stood a small white tree growing from a round bed of moss. Its branches carried no flowers or fruit. Instead, every leaf reflected a different star. A second passage waited behind the tree, narrower and darker than the first. The second passage descended gently. The sound of water grew deeper around you. At first, it seemed to come from the channel beneath the floor. Then the ceiling became transparent. Dark water rested above it. The passage had entered beneath a hidden lake inside the mountain. Roots drifted slowly through the water overhead. Small silver fish moved between them like pieces of reflected light. No rain disturbed the surface. No current pulled at the roots. The stone path continued through the blue darkness below the lake. At its far end, a round opening glowed with soft green light. The water above gathered brighter as you approached. The passage ended beneath a curtain of hanging roots. They descended from the lake above and stopped just short of the floor. Drops gathered along them, but never fell. Behind the roots, the round opening led into green light. As you moved closer, the roots drew apart. No hand guided them. No wind disturbed the water overhead. They simply opened enough for the path to continue. Beyond them waited a broad cavern filled with low plants and clear pools. The air felt warmer there. The scent of moss returned. You stepped between the roots. The lake remained above and behind, held silently within the mountain. The cavern was larger than the glass house. Its ceiling rose into darkness. Pale roots crossed the stone overhead in wide branching patterns. Below them, a hidden garden filled the mountain's center. Low green plants covered broad terraces. Clear pools gathered beneath the roots. White flowers opened wherever drops touched the moss. No stars could be seen here. Still, points of silver light moved across the pools as though the sky existed beneath the water. A winding path descended through the terraces. At the lowest level, an enormous tree grew from the cavern floor. Its trunk disappeared upward into the darkness. Its roots formed arches large enough to walk beneath. The path descended between the terraces in long, shallow curves. Water traveled beside it through channels formed by living roots. The giant tree grew larger with every level. Its bark was dark, almost black, yet thin silver lines moved beneath its surface. The roots spread throughout the cavern. Some supported pools. Others formed bridges between the terraces. Small white flowers grew from the spaces where root and stone met. The air remained completely still. No leaf moved. No ripple crossed the pools unless the water entered them. At the lowest terrace, one great root formed a doorway into the tree itself. Soft blue light rested beyond it. The root doorway opened into a hollow space within the tree. The walls curved around you in smooth, dark wood. Silver lines moved slowly through the grain, like quiet streams beneath the bark. The floor was covered in deep green moss. A spiral path climbed around the inner wall. It was formed from broad shelves of living wood. No railing bordered them. The center of the hollow remained open from floor to ceiling. Far above, a small circle of stars could be seen through an opening in the trunk. The blue light came from pale flowers growing along the path. Each one opened only as you approached. The spiral path rose gradually through the hollow trunk. Pale flowers opened ahead and closed again behind you. Their light never became bright. It marked only the next few steps. Openings appeared in the wooden wall at different heights. Through one, the underground garden could be seen far below. Through another, roots passed through dark stone into the mountain. Higher still, a narrow opening revealed the hidden lake. Silver fish moved slowly through the water beyond the wood. The circle of stars above grew larger. A cool breeze began to descend through the hollow. The tree was guiding you back toward the open sky. The spiral ended at a broad wooden platform. Above it, the trunk opened like a crown. Great branches curved outward in every direction. The night sky returned all at once. Stars filled the opening from edge to edge. The platform rested high above the hidden garden within the mountain. Yet the outer world had changed. You were no longer beneath the summit sanctuary. The tree had risen through another side of the mountain. Beyond its branches stretched a quiet plateau surrounded by clouds. At the plateau's center, a final garden rested beneath the stars. A path of pale roots connected the crown platform to it. The root path extended from the tree crown into open air. It was wide and level, woven from many pale roots growing together. Clouds moved beneath it. No mountain ridge could be seen below. The path seemed to float between the tree and the plateau. Small silver leaves grew along its edges. They turned slowly in the wind, but never broke free. The final garden waited ahead. It was smaller than the terraces below. A circle of grass, several low trees, a single pool reflecting the Milky Way. At the far side, a white canopy rested close to the ground. Nothing else disturbed the plateau. The route path met the plateau without a step. Soft grass replaced the pale wood. The final garden formed a perfect circle around the pool. Low trees leaned inward from the edges. Their branches carried silver leaves and small closed flowers. The pool reflected the Milky Way in one unbroken line. No streams entered it. No wind disturbed its surface. The white canopy stood beyond the water. 4 slender branches supported a roof of woven pale leaves. Beneath it rested a low bed covered in light blankets. Unlike the terrace bed, this one faced only the pool and the sky. The clouds concealed every other path. You followed the grass around the edge of the pool. The stars within it remained perfectly still. Clouds moved beyond the garden, but none crossed the reflection. Near the center of the water, a small cluster of white flowers floated without stems. One flower opened as you passed. Its petals revealed a faint blue center. Then another opened beside it. The light traveled quietly from flower to flower. It did not brighten the garden. It only marked the center of the pool. The white canopy waited on the opposite side. Its blankets moved gently in the mountain breeze. The final place of rest had been waiting above the clouds. The canopy stood lower than the mountain shelters below. Its 4 pale supports were living branches rooted in the grass. Woven leaves formed the roof. Small gaps allowed the stars to remain visible. The bed rested upon a low platform of smooth white stone. A light blanket lay folded at the foot. 2 soft cushions waited near the head. Beside the bed stood a shallow bowl filled with clear water. Several silver leaves floated across its surface. The pool remained visible beyond the open side of the canopy. Nothing enclosed the resting place. The sky, the clouds, and the quiet garden formed its walls. As you settled beneath the canopy, the final garden became even quieter. The silver leaves stopped turning. The closed flowers along the trees folded more tightly. The floating blossoms at the pool's center dimmed to almost nothing. Only the stars remained bright. The blanket held the warmth of sunlight, though no sun had touched the plateau. The cushions softened beneath your head. Beyond the pool, clouds drifted slowly through the darkness. No part of the long journey asked to be remembered. The paths had carried you here. The bridges had held steady. The garden had opened each place only when it was needed. Now, every route behind you could rest as well. The pool held one final reflection. At first, it showed only the Milky Way. Then the stars shifted gently within the water. The hidden garden returned in a single distant view. The gateway among the clouds, the lake and island pavilion, the glasshouse glowing on its ridge, the white trees and transparent bridge, the summit sanctuary beneath the open sky. None appeared separately. They formed one continuous path of pale light across the water. The reflection reached the edge nearest the canopy. Then it faded, leaving only stars again. The garden had not disappeared. It had simply become quiet enough to carry into sleep. The clouds below the plateau began to rise. They gathered around the garden's edges without entering it. The distant mountains vanished first. Then the horizon softened into pale blue mist. The pool and canopy remained untouched. Stars continued above, though their light became gentler. The sound of the mountain faded until even the wind could no longer be heard. Only your breathing remained. Slow, even, unhurried. The final garden rested between the stars and the clouds. Nothing could reach it. Nothing needed to. The blanket settled more closely around you. The last open flowers on the pool folded their petals and became still. The stars slowly softened beyond the woven canopy. Silver leaves became quiet shapes against the sky. The pool no longer reflected separate points of light. It held one gentle blue glow, deep and calm. Clouds surrounded the plateau from every side. They moved so slowly that the garden seemed to float upon them. The long path through the mountains had ended. No doorway closed behind you. No bridge disappeared. Every place remained exactly where it had been, waiting beneath the same sky. The blanket was warm, the cushions were soft, and somewhere far below, the hidden garden settled into stillness with you. There was nothing left to follow, nothing left to find, only rest.